The next demonstration will be the R versus Daniels case, and Denton Wynn will be playing the role of Mr. Daniels. Sandra Cunningham will be leading the direct evidence.
Before we start, I'm going to make the same comments that Mr. Webster made, and that is, of course, this is a very truncated examination in chief. And I also have to add that I have never directly examined an accused person in my life. I usually get to cross-examine them. Sir, you were born and brought up here in Vancouver.
Yes, I was.
In fact, your mother still lives in the house you grew up in.
Yes, she does. She refuses to move.
You graduated from Lord Byng High School in 1979?
That is correct.
What about university?
Oh, my mom wanted me to go to university, and I even had an athletic scholarship, but I just loved golf so much I just wanted to pursue a golf career, so that's what I did.
Golf has been a passion of yours since a young age?
Ever since I got a club on my Christmas morning one year when I was 8 years old, yes.
You've been employed as the manager of the pro shop at the Point Grey Golf and Country Club for the last approximately 8 years?
Yes, that is correct.
In fact, it was the deceased, R.J. Case, who hired you for that job.
Yes, Mr. Case was the one that hired me. He was my boss, yes.
And he remained your boss until his tragic death?
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
In addition to your salary, which was $55,000 per year, were there other financial perks that came with your job?
Yes, I got a discount on all my clothes from the gift shop, and I got to play golf a couple of times a week for free, as well as the odd bet here and there between players and whatnot.
At some point when you first started working at the golf club, did those side bets with members get you into some trouble?
Yes, they did. Most people didn't object to it. They wanted to make bets, but some of them, I guess, did. And I was investigated by the police, and I was charged.
You were charged with bookmaking, which you pled guilty to, and you got a suspended sentence with a 5-year probation term?
Yes, I did.
And the only terms of your probation were that you were to keep the peace and be of good behavior and not engage in any bookmaking of any sort.
That is correct, yes.
Sir, I'd like to focus now on your marriage. We've heard from Ms. Daniels as to her perspective as to what went wrong with your marriage. Do you take any responsibility for that breakdown of your marriage?
Oh, absolutely, yes, I do. It was a very bad mistake on my part after Angela was born. My wife started to ignore me, in the boudoir, if you will. So I have a very strong libido, so I started going out and fooling around, unfortunately. And then I had an affair with a waitress from the Hooters restaurant, and that was my demise. But it was all my fault. It was just a stupid thing to do, very stupid.
We've heard evidence from Ms. Daniels about just how awful the court proceedings in relation to your separation have been. How has your wife's filing for divorce affected your ability to talk to her?
Well, she's intent on trying to get Angela taken away from me on a permanent basis, and I can't have that. So every time we tried to negotiate and talk, she would just throw Mr. Case's name at me and say what a great man he is around Angela. So we'd start talking, and they would eventually turn into screaming matches. It wasn't very pleasant, to tell you the truth.
How did your wife's filing for divorce affect your relationship with Mr. Case?
I mean, other than the fact that he was sleeping with my wife in my own home, it made it hard, to say the least. I mean, what could I do, really? I was stuck between a rock and a hard place.
What do you mean by being stuck between a rock and a hard place?
Man, where do I start?
This isn't supposed to be funny.
Well, I couldn't really say too much to Mr. Case about it or confront him because he's my boss. I mean, he could fire me. And since the last court proceedings with my ex-wife, I was told I had to pay the mortgage off. I had to pay the medical bills, the monthly bills, give her one of the cars, plus $400 a week. So I was in no position to lose my job. I really needed the money. And again, there was the thing with Angela. Angela means everything to me. So
How is all of this affecting you?
the fear of losing my daughter actually made me, I'm sorry, I couldn't lose my daughter, so I was starting to get a little crazy, to tell you the truth, and I wasn't handling it as well as I would hope.
What did you do to try and deal with the stress of your job, the separation, your fear of losing your daughter, your financial concerns?
Well, in order to clear my head, I figured that I'd better take some time away and get my head on straight, so I decided to take a hiking trip into the Rocky Mountains just to be alone and think things through and come up with some kind of a game plan that would benefit both me and my wife at the time.
And I understand that you went to Clearwater?
Yes, I went to Clearwater. There's a Yellowhead Provincial Park near there. I think it's about an hour away or so. And I spent a lot of time in the mountains by myself as a teenager, so I thought that would be the best thing to do. So I went out there on March 21st, I believe. My brother Matt picked me up and drove me to the provincial park where I started my hiking.
And what were your plans once you got to the provincial court?
Well,
Park. Little Freudian slip there. Yeah. What were your plans, sir, when you got to the provincial park?
Well, I had my camping gear with me, my tent, my provisions for at least 2 weeks, and I decided to go up into the mountains and just be with myself and spend a couple of times up there alone and figure things out.
So, as I understand what you've just said, sir, you were planning to go hiking alone.
I did, yes.
Were there any procedures in place so that the park officials would know who had gone into the park and how to locate them in case of an emergency?
They have a sign-up sheet that they post on the board there where everyone coming into the park should sign in and what time they left and who they're with, etc. Just a safety precaution in case one gets lost or weather permitting, something happens and they need to find you in a hurry, that kind of thing.
Sir, there's a document in front of you. Could you turn it over, please?
Yes.
It's a document entitled, Welcome to Yellowstone Provincial Park.
Yes, it is.
I have a copy for your ladyship to assist you in following this evidence. I will be directing Mr. Daniels to a particular entry on that document, and I have highlighted that entry on your ladyship's copy. Mr. Daniels, do you recognize the document?
Yes, I do. It's the sign-in sheet from the park.
Do you see your name on that page?
Yes, it's on number 11.
There are a number of entries on page 11.
Yes.
On line 11.
Yes, there is.
Could you read them, please?
Solo at the hiker of Solo, that's myself. Date and time was 3rd month, 21st of 08 at 4:50 p.m. And destination was Trailhead. And projected date to exit the park was 4:03:08.
Did you make all those entries on line 11?
Yes, I did.
And when did you make those entries?
March 21st, prior to going into the park.
After you set out that afternoon, did you see any other hikers during the 2-week period you were in the mountains?
For the first couple of days, I didn't see anyone, but after that, I saw quite a few people, shared a few campfires, had some dinners with them, so forth.
Sir, when did you get back to the trailhead?
I believe it was on a Friday, April 3rd, somewhere around 4 o'clock, 8, I think it was a.m.
And did somebody meet you at the trailhead?
My brother Matt picked me up. We had arranged prior to that he would pick me up and then escort me back to the airport, get me home.
I'd introduce the airline ticket at this point, but I'm not going to do that in the interest of time. Mr. Daniels, I'd like to turn your attention now to what happened when you got back to Vancouver.
Okay. Well, I got home and I noticed this card stuck in the doorframe of my house, and I read it, and it was from a police officer. I assumed that it was because my car had been missing. I noticed that when I got home, it wasn't where I usually park it, so I reported it stolen. And didn't think nothing of it, to tell you the truth. And
Did you take a closer look at that card a little
I
few
did a
days
couple of
after you
days
got
later,
back?
yes. I did a couple of days later because I hadn't heard anything about my vehicle. So, and then I looked at the card again and I noticed the homicide thing on it. So I called him up right away and I went down to the police station.
And when you met with the detective, what happened?
Well, he explained to me that Mr. Case had been killed, and I was just in shock. It was unbelievable to me. And he said that I had been a suspect and asked me a few questions.
Sorry, sir, you're going to have to keep your voice up.
Sure, sorry.
If you could just repeat your last sentence.
He said that Mr. Case had been murdered and that it happened while I was supposedly camping, and that I was probably a likely suspect, and we had a conversation and that was about it.
What was your reaction when he told you that Mr. Case had been murdered?
I was disbelief, tell you the truth. I just couldn't believe it. I mean, I thought maybe it was an accident. He got hit by a car or something, but he had told me that no, he had been shot, and that's how he died.
Sir, did the detective formally arrest you and tell you that you had the right to call a lawyer?
He didn't officially arrest me, but he did say that if I wanted to talk, I'd need a lawyer, and I waived that. I said I don't need a lawyer. I didn't do anything. And
what did you tell the detective?
I basically told him that I had been away at the time of the supposed murder, and I was hiking up in the mountains, and I wasn't even there. And that if he wanted to anything from me, that I would be more than willing to supply him with anything that he needed, airline tickets, anything and everything.
Did the detective ask you to provide him with your fingerprints?
Yes, which I did.
Did he ask you anything about whether or not you had a gun?
He asked if I had a gun. I did mention that I did at one time have a gun. But because of my frame of mind, because of what was going on between me and my wife, I was concerned that I might do something irrational. So I took the gun and I pawned it. I didn't want it in the house. So I pawned it with Mr. Levine, who owns a pawn shop downtown.
Okay, I'm going to finish up now because of the timing, so I'll just ask these final three questions. In fact, sir, after your initial meeting with the detective, you went back to the police station to see Detective Ryder 2 days later.
Yes, I did.
You brought him the pawn ticket and the
key
to
my wife's house, yes.
Sir, did you kill R.J. Case?
No, I did not.
Did you have anything at all to do with his death?
No, I did not.
Thank you, milady. Those are my questions.
Thank you.